Last week, the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action, ruling that race can no longer be a factor in college admissions. This is a landmark decision that will force schools to reshape the way they admit students. Here to talk about the implications of that decision and how it affects us here in Louisiana is political analyst Jim Inkster. Thank you so much for joining us, Jim. How you doing?
Doing well.
All right, so like I said, Supreme Court struck down affirmative action that had been in play for about 40 years or so. So how was affirmative action used, and I guess, how was that factored into college admissions in the first place?
Affirmative action was a way to have equity in the classroom and have more students of color participate at the highest levels of academia. This case involved Harvard, a major private university in the Ivy League, and the University of North Carolina, which has quite a reputation in its own right and is a public institution. And on occasion, race was used as a factor to get more blacks and other minorities into those universities, and the Supreme Court voted 6-3 to say that that can't be done, at least not in the way it has been. And this completely reverses a decision of just 20 years earlier in which the court ruled 5-4 the other way. So it's remarkable when two justices go from one side to the other, even though the court is configured differently. It makes a world of difference, because the difference between 4 votes and 6 votes is the fact that the law has been changed. But it's too early to see how this plays out. But there was already a move, for example, in the state of Missouri, based on this decision, to do away with race-based financial aid. So if we take all the tools out of the toolbox that enable universities to have more people who are non-white, then we're going to have more whites and fewer minorities participating at the institutions that are considered primary as far as people getting an education in our country.
Well, let's back up for a minute. Not everybody thinks that this decision is a bad one. Some people see this as an opportunity to reshape the way colleges admit students and maybe make it a little bit more equitable. Is that something that you've also heard, that this is a chance to just redefine everything and start fresh?
Well, I think in an ideal world, yes, it would be something that would be good, because the last thing we want is a person to be judged on the basis of their skin color. But I don't think that affirmative action did that. It was just one way to enable kids who didn't have the opportunities on the average that other kids do, kids who are in the majority race, to enable them to have the same opportunity. But we'll see, and there are always exceptions, as we know. But in this case, I think on the whole it will be something that will certainly mean that there will be more whites in higher education attending these schools and fewer blacks.
All right, so you were mentioning the other schools that had done away with this affirmative action ruling, years ago. So do you see any other policies that schools could implement to ensure that there is diversity now that there is no affirmative action?
Well, the Supreme Court did, in its ruling, in the majority opinion, did say that a kid in an essay, for example, could note that he or she is black or Hispanic or Asian, and use that as a way of saying that it's affected their life experience, and because of that they could add something to the university that would not be there if they were not part of it. But that's a much harder lift than to just basically say, look, we've got to have more people of color on campus or we won't be reflective of the states we represent. And people say, why is Harvard involved? They're a private school. Well, they get federal funding. And Harvard, for example, has an endowment of $53 billion. LSU has an endowment of $700 million. That's 53,000 billion. And Harvard quite often allows kids who are sons and granddaughters of people who graduated from that university to get in without the requisite test scores that would be required for somebody who didn't have a legacy at Harvard University. So now that's going to be under attack. So this opens a whole Pandora's box of where we go in higher education.
And of course, age-old cliche, only time will tell.
That is true.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.